Great. Okay, let's get started then. We want to maximize our time together. Ooh, that's good. I nearly had to say let's pray because that always shuts up Christians. But just a quick thing. Tomorrow we're gonna have a workshop session where there'll be 3 different workshops going on. So at the next meal time, tea time, I'll just do a little thing on the flip chart over there. So if you just go and mark off which one you want to go to, there's 3. One of them, Claire and I are going to lead, which will be, if you fancy just a conversation, it'll be more of a kind of chat. Let's chat together, talking about some of our themes of how do we stay Christ-centered and hope-filled and mission-orientated. So that'll be the one that Claire and I will be doing. Then there's my friend Anna Ruddick who's come in, whose doctoral dissertation was on the Eden movement in Manchester, and lots of her reflections on this thing that she's describes as missional pastoral care, which is kind of how do we do discipleship in urban areas, which is fantastic. So Anna's just not arriving till tomorrow. That's very recommended. And then we've got Ray Driscoll. Where's Ray? Give us a wave, Ray. Good to see you. Ali Williams and Caitlin Carmichael Davis. I've not met. Is she just coming? Okay. And so there'll be 3 people who have been planting pioneering in very different ways, all sharing a bit of their story and then kind of talking together about what they've learned. So if you want some with kind of a variety of voices, then sign up for that one. So they're the three workshops we've got. We're delighted for this session to have an incredible, dream team really for this session, and we've got the new Archbishop's Mission Enabler for the North, Mark Powley, and also Bishop of Barking, Bishop Lynne Cullens, who I have lots in common with because we both hail from Salford, God's favourite city, and so I'm very excited to hear from both of them. So I think, Mark, you're going to start us off, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. Just before we go into this next session, and as a way of introducing prayer, I wonder if you could take a moment to think what it is you would love from the next 24 hours, what you would love for God to give you, what you're looking for, what you're hoping for. So maybe just have a think about that for a moment. And then just as we get ready and pray, I just want to encourage you, maybe just with 1 or 2 people next to you, just very briefly, just say to them, what is it that you would love? It just needs to be very brief. What is it you would love from the next 24 hours? So let's just share those for a moment, and then we'll pray. Okay, let's draw it together. Let's just hold the people right next to us in prayer as we start. Mighty God, we bless you that you are here, that you're with us. We see you shining in the faces of those around us. And we ask you now to bless us, that you will give us what we are hoping for. You are our hope. And that you'll give us what we're not expecting yet, because you are the God of surprises. And that you will bless those who are with us, and that we would be a blessing to each other in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, it's such an amazing privilege to be with you here. My name is Mark Powley, as Chris has said. I'm from Manchester originally, and I've just finished as principal of St Hild College. We've got some people from St Hild College here. It's nice to see you. And I'm a massive fan of Emmanuel College, always have been. I have immense respect for what the college is doing, for the leadership, and so I just think it's an amazing privilege. I would bring greetings from the Archbishop of York, who's my new boss, but Shemuel has beaten me to it, because Shemuel Matthews is the best connected person in the Church of England, and he said, oh, by the way, I met the Archbishop. When was it? Where's he now? He says, you met him, what, this morning? Yeah, I met him this morning. He sends his greetings. Yeah, thank you. I had one job, and you've done it. So my job is to help bring a step change in church planting and revitalisation across the north. And so I'm delighted to be here, really excited about the people in this room, some of whom I know, many of whom I'm looking forward to getting to know. And I'm very excited to be here because I don't think this is an obvious conference. Okay, that's what I'm going to go with here. Let's see if it works. I don't think it's an obvious conference, but I think it's an important one. Okay, I just want to develop that a little bit more. So, estate planting. Okay, this is an estate planting. I'm in the right room. It's an estate planting conference. And I want to ask, before we all dive in and the rest of the program unfolds, do they really fit together? Estate planting. Now, that might sound like a bit of a stupid question, given that that's clearly what the conference is about. It may seem a little rude to the organisers, but just as we're near the beginning, before we plunge in, what are we doing by putting these two things together? Estates plantings. You know, you could have like a buildings development conference. You'd be like, yeah, buildings development, yeah, I get that. You could have a liturgical revision conference. And those things, exactly. We're not going to go there, but, you know, I get the idea. It's like, it's a thing. Estates planting. Is there just a little bit of a culture clash between some of what we would associate with estates ministry and some of what we would associate with church planting? Now, for me, if you asked me to do a word cloud about estates ministry, I would be doing things like kind of gritty, long-term, rooted, contextual, and so forth. And if you asked me to do a word cloud about church planting, I'd be saying, dynamic, aspirational, business-like sometimes. Now, maybe for you, it's a total match. You're like, I don't get it. Estates planting, I'm there. I get it. I will come back to that in a minute. But bear with the fact that for some of us, and for some people outside today's conference, estates and planting may not kind of just naturally fit together. It's like Archbishop vaping, or like it's like Metallica Mothers Union. I'm just thinking, like, do they fit? Romance McDonald's. So I say that because my first date was in McDonald's. But anyway, let me just unpack that from a personal perspective, okay? So if I think about estates ministry, I think about Hattersley. And I think we've got some people who've got some connections with Hattersley. Yeah. So I had finished university, and I was looking to do a year of ministry, and I went to the estate of Hattersley. And I remember it well, being in this little church, and there was an afternoon baptism of a family who looked like the last family that I would expect in a church. And I think they felt like they were the last family that should be in that church, having an infant baptism. And the vicar was doing it, and I chatted to the vicar afterwards, and he's there in his robes, smoking a cigarette, and I was thinking, I don't understand this world. I don't get it. Am I going to cope here? Am I going to thrive here? Raised a whole load of questions for me. When I think church planting, I think of second-round interviews in a HTB church plant in London with some Oxbridge graduates, bankers, and someone who's a permanent secretary to a future prime minister, being asked about aspiration, future planning. So, do you see what I'm coming from? This is my story. It doesn't have to be your story. Maybe in your world, the two fit together. But in my world, my word cloud for the one is slightly different to my word cloud for the other. So forgive me if they don't instinctively fully overlap. I'm not saying they don't belong together. I'm not saying people in this room aren't already making it happen. What I'm saying is not always the most obvious match. And for the Church of England especially, is not everybody here is Church of England. Is that right? Have we got any? Hooray! Welcome. So for those in an institutional church, like or similar to the Church of England, is this something that we actually have successful models for? Is this something that we know what to do and how to replicate and how to support it? When an estate plant happens in the Church of England, does it happen because of the official structures? Or does it happen despite the official structures? Or because somebody doesn't know what the official structures are? So I just want to, if you took people in the Church of England who have experience of estate ministry, like long-standing experience of estate ministry, and I'm not one of them, and you also took the people who had experience and expertise in church planting, what would the overlap be? And the reason I'm saying that is, let's just maybe acknowledge at the top of this conference that this is a bold juxtaposition to put these two things together, estates and planting. That takes some boldness, as Michael's already said, and in a way, I'm just very much picking up on what he's been saying. Do we realize, is it worth acknowledging that we do not know quite what we are doing yet in certain ways here? Should we just say how, as you were saying, Michael, how bold we might need to be here in order to bring these two things together? And I just think that's maybe important. As I said, it's not that I don't think, I'm not saying they don't belong together. What I'm saying is, what does it take to hold them together? And if you are somebody, and there will be people in this room who are like, no, this is instinctive for me. I know some of the people here who would say, look, of course they go together. Then I just want to say how important your voice is. If you can see how these two flow together, you can say, yeah, I can see fruitful estate planting ministry. I'm ready. I've seen it, or I feel fully prepared for it. Then how important your voice is. Because not everybody sees it. And we're working in an institution that I don't think instinctively gets it. So when there are those who, sometimes like me, don't always see and make those instinctive links, if you do, you are a gift to the church. And we need that gift. So I just think a conference like this is absolutely crucial. And I just want to bring a very simple word into it, which I hope is a challenge and an encouragement. And because I've recently worked for a theological college, I need to begin with a Bible quiz. So I'm just going to ask you a question for which no cheating, okay? In the book of Ezekiel, no cheating, okay? And don't shout out either. In the book of Ezekiel, there is the famous vision of the valley of the dry bones. Okay, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn to the person or people next to you and see if you can answer without cheating. I've said that 3 times now. You might want to ask yourself why that is. What vision or instruction comes next after the valley of the dry bones? Now, you can pass, but I'm just interested. So why don't you just turn to the person next to you and say, what comes after the valley of the dry bones? Just share it, see what you've got. Okay, that's enough. That's quite loud. Does that mean that everybody knew what it was? What is it? Sorry? You need to tell us first. Okay, right. Good point. Yeah. See, that's why I said no cheating. It's this kind of attitude that's the problem. So the answer is the two sticks. Oh, the two sticks. I'll read about the two sticks in a minute. So if you said that, you were right. I don't know what everyone else was saying. There's some strange gestures going on around the room, but it doesn't matter. So before Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel prophesies to the mountains. Actually speak to the mountains and speak to the valleys. And as part of that, speak to the cities. Actually address the cities. After that, a prophecy against idols. After that, the valley of bones. And it was so profound. I was reading it the other day. It's not just bones, like dry bones. Of course they're dry bones because that's how the song goes and everything. But the bones weren't just dead bones. They weren't just dying bones or dead bones. They were dead and dry bones. Very dry bones. And then after that, Ezekiel is told, just read some highlights from Ezekiel 37. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take a stick of wood and write on it belonging to Judah and the Israelites associated with him. Then take another stick of wood and write on it belonging to Joseph, that is to Ephraim, and all the Israelites associated with him. The two halves of God's broken people. The two sides of the story. Verse 17, join them together in one stick so that they will become one in your hand. And when people ask you, won't you tell us what you mean like this? Say to them, what do you mean by this? Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm going to take the stick of Joseph, which is in Ephraim's hand, and the Israelite tribes associated with him, and join it to Judah's stick. I will make them into a single stick of wood, and they will become one in my hand. So if our prayer is for the revitalization of the church, for God to breathe life into the bones which are dead and also dry, then what comes with that prayer and with that prophecy is that God will take things which were separate and will join them together. God will take worlds of discourse, ways of thinking, word clouds and cultures that were separate and bring them together. And it's an act of prophecy and an act of hope and an act of life-giving power to be the kind of people who hold those things together. And people will say, what are you doing holding those two things together? Estates and church planting. And you'll say, this is what God is doing. God is bringing planting and life and energy and aspiration together with estates ministry. And that is part of the work that God is doing. And that's why this conference is so important. So I have a picture. There we go. And so the only other thing I wanted to do was just maybe mention three things, if we have the second one. Maybe mention three kinds of connection that we could then make as we hold the two together. The first I'm going to call presence and strategy. Presence and strategy. Estate ministry is about presence. Okay, that is known, right? That is known. Not, I think, increasingly realize, not the presence of incarnational ministry where I am Jesus and I take my presence to this place that needs saving. The book launch, addresses this issue. Other people have addressed the issue of the rhetoric, the language we're using when we do this. The incarnation, just to touch on the theological point for a moment, does not show that the world is a terrible destination that God will only go to in extremis. The incarnation reveals that the world is capax Dei, capable of bearing God. Okay? The incarnation reveals that the world, creation, is capax Dei, capable of bearing God. Our communities are capable of bearing God. They have an inherent beauty. They are ready for Christ. And in them, Christ can become embodied in a new and unique way. And so we become a little bit less like Jesus going on a heroic journey and a little bit more like Elizabeth saying to the pregnant teenager, wow, Christ can become real in you. And I got to see it. So there is a presence ministry, and we need that presence and to see how presence emerges, but we also need presence and strategy, and we hold the two together. Strategy, where we don't just simply wait and sit back and see what emerges in case something might emerge, but there is strategy, there is planning, and dare I say it, a growth mentality. Even if that means the plans that we have in our heads have to be written and rewritten on a regular basis, we hold the two together. I'm going to say we hold together the margins and the center, and we hold them together. And we want to go beyond the conversation where the margins say to the center, you don't recognize what we're doing, you're not funding it properly. And the center replies, well, we would fund you more if you hit our targets. We want a richer conversation between the center and the margins, and we hold on to them both, and we don't let go. And we bring them together. And last of all, perseverance and new structures. Perseverance has always been crucial, but we can't just persevere endlessly and just, as it were, baptize failure. We need, from people in this room, to be learning what are the new models and what are the new structures and the new wineskins that are emerging, and how might we multiply them? And we need to pay attention to the structures that support those wineskins, the training, the funding, the networking. And the organizers of this conference are doing a bold thing, but we cannot let it stop here. 8 years ago, I got invited to a church planting conference at the Archbishop of York's Palace. I thought, this is incredible. I'm going to an Archbishop of York's Palace, never done that before, and it's about church planting. Fantastic. I chatted to the organizer of the conference at the end of the day. I said, this has been so significant, a church planting conference here at the Bishop's Palace. And he said, yeah, well, if there's anything else we can do, you just let me know. And my heart sank. I thought, oh, that was it. If there's anything else you can do. What do you mean if there's anything else we can do? We've just talked about the need to structurally rewire the entire Church of England, and you're saying, if there's anything else I can do, yeah, don't just have a conference. So this has to be about persevering and pursuing new structures and new wineskins and learning as we go. I'm going to hand over to Lynne in a moment. But I just want to say that there are significant signs of hope that we are seeing. New forms of leadership training. And I want to massively thank Emmanuel for pioneering an action learning ordination pathway. An ordination pathway which is not about writing certain essays for certain academics to see and to hit a certain kind of image or model of what a priest should be. I want to thank Michael and Nick McKee, who's a key part of Emmanuel and now going to be heading up ministry training for the Church of England, which is really cool, and others for pioneering a new form that could actually help us find the kind of structure that we're looking for. If we had longer, we'd talk about initiatives about lay church planting, but I'm sure people will be talking about that. Planting in schools, new initiatives to plant 450 churches in schools nationwide in the next 3 to 5 years. How many of those could be in estates? In estates that we are connected with. So I see real signs of hope, but let me just encourage us to hold the two things together. Don't let go of God's passion that he has given you to keep it real and connected and to be contextual to the place where you are or the people that you represent. But don't let go of the challenge to be strategic and deliberate and even at times a little bit ruthless about what it is you want and what it is you would love to see. And with those things in mind, let us see what God does with us in the next 24 hours and in the coming years as well. Thank you.
Well, follow that. So, hello everybody. My name's Lynne Cullens. I'm chair of the National Estate Churches Network, and I'm also chair of the Estates Evangelism Task Group. And in that guise, I would like to say a huge thank you to Emmanuel and the inspirational Michael Layden for partnering with us on this conference. And I would just like to thank Dave and Shemel and Claire and Chris, who I think were kind of the team that led it and put it together. So thanks so much. I'm now Bishop of Barking, and in that role, I don't get to do a lot of planting or pioneering myself, but I think my role is about those 3 C's that Michael mentioned. How can I create an environment where clergy within my area who want to plant, who want to pioneer, are given the courage, the confidence, and are enabled to use their creativity to do so. So I've actually got a token member of my clergy with me, but you'll see why shortly, because he's produced a brilliant film of the work that is happening on one of the estates in London. Can I just say that there was kind of an implication, it may have been stronger than that in the brief for the conference, that this was northern based. So 2 of my things aren't based in the north, they're based in London, but actually I think there's much to learn from them. So I'm going to talk about 3 stories, 3 case studies if you like. Pioneering into an established social housing estate in Stratford that's in the heart of regeneration and development. So what does that look like? Planting out into a neighbouring estate from a traditional, and I have to say fairly unambitious, Anglo-Catholic church in Crewe. And the final one is planting a Brazilian Portuguese-speaking congregation into a closed estate church in Canning Town in East London. So that's what you've got to come. Chris mentioned before that I was from Salford, and I had a conversation with a bloke. It was quite confusing because he thought I was with the Deliverance conference, and I thought he was with the Estates conference. So we were talking, and then I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from Manchester." And I said, "Oh, I'm from Manchester too." And he said, "Whereabouts?" I said, "I'm from Salford." And he said, "Oh, I am sorry to hear that." So you have a word with him, Chris. Put him right. So we're going to have a look at Dan. Dan, can you just stand up before we have the film? So this is Dan Scott, who made the film, and please do, when you see it, we're going to have a bit of a buzz about it, but when you see it, it's fantastic, and do catch him after this hour or so and ask him how it's been and what he's learned from it, because he's an inspiration too. So can we have the film, please?
Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces of their heart.
We started Christ Church 3 Mills with a vision to be a church in and for our local community. We had a passion to see local people in the community getting involved in place. We long to see the colours of heaven in every corner of this community. We We're a church who loves to party, and particularly on the local green. Summer events, we'll put a big marquee up and people are doing crafts and enjoying being together and getting to celebrate.
Right, today we're having egg hunts. That's for all right. Why? Because we want to entertain the children all around here. So for them to come out and enjoy the fun that we are sharing with everybody in this area.
Christchurch free meals.
Christchurch free meal and Stratford.
Yes, because it's fun to get to know the community and make friends and be with all the children on Easter.
Sometimes I've never seen before. I see them today. That's church. Church is doing a great thing.
Sense of community and togetherness, and a lot of joy for the kids and family, giving hope. I think it's amazing to be a part of this.
Just showing them that Jesus is risen, but also that they are welcome as well.
We've invited our neighbourhood to celebrate with us, to look with us for the colours of heaven. We've also started to become more bold in living out our spirituality on our estate and on our streets. And we've seen this growing response as we've taken the rhythms of church and we've shared them with our community. And whether that's been sharing their heroes on All Saints, or sharing our hopes and dreams and lighting up our local green over Advent, coming and joining in at our prayer space out at the heart of the estate on Ash Wednesday, or this incredible response to our Stations of the Cross, an interactive journey through our estate at Holy Week. To take the practices of church life and live them out with our community. As we've seen God growing something and building something here, at the heart of that has been the growth of this intergenerational worshipping community gathered around word and sacrament, committed to the presence of Jesus and to living out our faith with one another.
Come all broken, come all.
I think this is second family for me, that most people when I see you first time and you feel very warm and spoke about your problem, and of course I am found this is God, and for my life.
When everyone comes together and responds.
Like every service is something new, something different. So it's something to look forward to every time.
I've been a part of the church for a month now, and my favourite thing about the church is how welcoming everyone is. I go to church alone, so it's very nice and I feel really comfortable with everyone.
And everybody is welcome, no matter who you are. And even if you don't come to church services, just knowing that the church is not far away from you to just reach out.
People who are seeing their lives changed by the gentle presence of God's Spirit and the work of the people of God in this place. Everyone has a seat at the table, fully committed to the radical inclusivity of the gospel. We are taking people on this journey where we join in with discipleship by being a family on mission, sharing our lives together. Because we believe that in this place, Jesus is making all things new. On the Millmeads estate, in the 3 Mills area of Stratford, God is transforming lives, but God is also transforming this place. The gospel is good news. And so we
recline at the table. Come let down your guard. You're never a stranger. Just come as you are. Come behold.
Nice one. So just to begin, by the way, heckling's welcome all the way through, but there is a chance for questions and answers at the end and feedback. So, if you can wait, that might be good. But just turn to the people around you. That film, what was good in it? What did you think, actually, that's something really good about that particular plant, about that particular piece of pioneering? What was, if you were going to look at, we talk about business language, best practice, what about that film showed something that you think is a really good aspect of planting? So just turn to the people around you, just have a few minutes. So, can we come back together? Maybe not. Can we come back together? I hope that's because there's loads of good stuff in there that you can see. Anybody want to offer anything that they were particularly struck by, or that they think was good, or that, you know, kind of stood out for them? Yep.
For me, it was how church was taken to the people.
Yeah.
We weren't saying to people, you've got to come to us, but it was taken out, it was taken to the middle of the estate. It was so accessible.
Yeah, and that's courage, isn't it? Takes courage to put your board out and say, we're going to have morning prayer here at 9 o'clock, and stand there and wait. That takes courage and confidence. Yep.
It felt like it was led by the community, not by the person behind the corner.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, physically. Dan made this film not for this. Dan made this film for his own PCC, for his own board, because he's a CIO with a BMO. So he made it for his own group of folk for their annual meeting. But actually, I like that. He led from the back, didn't he? He led from the back. So thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Yep.
This is said with the utmost respect. It's not polished.
Yeah.
It's not fancy. It's nothing, you know, it's not high value.
Yeah.
It's just going out there and being with the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
It seemed to be about discipleship, so lives transformed as well as community transformed, and didn't have a tension between the two. Sometimes we separate them both without worry.
It was. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Anybody else? Yep.
Something about how you do the practices with us, rather than come and hear what we believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, helping people to connect their lives and their narratives with the story of our faith and the prayers and so on. There's lots of connections between that and what does this look like in your life, like the saints and your heroes. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Wonderfully diverse.
Yeah. Yeah, on that, I mean, that's kind of easy for us. So my episcopal area, we have 170 different nationalities. It's the most diverse community on the planet, actually, statistically. So, but leading diversity well is a different matter, and I feel that was leading diversity well. So thank you for all of that. I mean, I put in my kind of brain dump that I did on it, raising up local leaders. You know, all those people who speak are embryonic leaders, aren't they? All those people who appear on camera. Gathering locally, because all space is God's space. Observing festivals and the kids that were being admitted to communion. So the church has been going since 2019. You started on Zoom during the pandemic. So it's been going a while, but they've just had their first annual meeting. So these things take time. But that's great, you know, kind of observing the festivals, bringing them alongside, as somebody said over there. I loved the way it was hope and celebration and a place for sorrow and lament. So it wasn't all singing and dancing. It was real. The church as convener, it was fun and it was creative. What I loved about, I'd not been in the role very long, and I asked to go and see Dan, to visit him. And I drove over there, and I couldn't find his house. And I was on this estate, and everywhere looked the same, and I was like getting hopelessly lost. And there was a bloke, a road sweeper, and I pulled my car over, I wound my window down, and I said, I'm lost, can you help me? And I had a dog collar on. And he said, are you looking for the vicar? And I said, yeah, I am. Now, bear in mind, this is central London. So I said, yeah, I am. And then he directed me, and I was probably a good half to a mile away from Dan's house. And I thought, when I get there, it must have the vicarage outside or something. Not a bit of it. It's just a complete, forgive me, Dan, a completely inconspicuous semi-detached house on a social housing estate with no significant marker outside. Now that's presence. That's incarnational presence that has been established there, the church on that estate. So that's our first one. And I think we've got some more images of that. So, Dan, do you want to just tell us what those are?
So there's our Christmas Day outdoor service at the top there. There's our families group, which meets once a month to disciple families. There's an event for, I think, the coronation of the Jubilee last year.
Brilliant. And we've got one more.
Yeah, this was something we ran at towards the end of COVID, where we designed all these discs. People could come along and take one if they wanted some hope. And then bottom right, we're on our Stations of the Cross tour around our estate, and the children being admitted to communion just on this last Easter Day at the top.
That's brilliant. And then I think there's a final. So that's you, yeah. So that's great. So let's move on to, because we've not got a lot of time, so let's move on. The next one is crew. This is one that I was involved in. Church at the Brookhouse. So can we have the next slide, please? So this was St Andrew's Church in Crewe. You might spot me in that rather fetching robe there. I was priest in charge there, and within our parish boundary, we had a large social housing estate called the Brookhouse. And we really had no contact with the Brookhouse at all, really. But the people in the church, and it was a really traditional Anglo-Catholic church doing traditional churchy stuff. And so they didn't do any outreach, really. But they had a heart for the people on the Brookhouse. They had a heart for people in disadvantage. So can we go on to the next slide? So what we did was we approached the extra care housing scheme on the Brookhouse, and we asked them if we could host a church service there. There was no other community facilities. Even the pub was tiny, so you couldn't really get anybody in there. And so we asked if we could do a church service there once a month, and they said yes. So the first thing that we did was we got our church ready, because our church needed to understand that we weren't really very accessible to people from the estate. So we set up children's provision in our services on a Sunday. We set up a parent and toddlers group. We reviewed our baptism policy to make sure that it was as open and accessible as possible. We established a community cafe, and we went carol singing on the estate. And gradually, we built some relationships with people on the estate before we even went anywhere near planting onto the estate. And once we'd got a good group of people, we then planted onto the estate. And it's still going. That was about 5-6 years ago. Has it grown into kind of an HTB megachurch model? No. But is it still going? Yeah, it is. It's a small, faithful witness. It's a small congregation there, but it is their church on the estate. But what was remarkable that I hadn't expected was this. Our church changed. St. Andrew's changed radically. They wanted to put on community Olympics. So they all went out onto this massive field in the middle of the estate, and we had running races, and they put on a bring and share buffet, and we had all kinds of stuff going on. Nearly 150 people turned up from the local area. New people joined the church and started to volunteer for our projects. We went to the big church day out, the kind of stuff that they'd never, ever thought of doing. So in going out and reaching out in trying to bring the transforming love of Christ to others, we were transformed ourselves. So that was that one. And a final one is, let's keep going, is this one. So St. Matthias, Canning Town, with Reverend Raquel Moreira and Reverend Amy Scott. There we had a closed church. It had been closed for a good number of years, and it was in the middle of an area of really acute deprivation in the East End of London. And we had one of our curates came to us who was of Brazilian heritage, Portuguese speaking, and she'd got a community of people, around 20-25 people, who wanted to be church. So we licensed Amy Stott as priest in charge there, and we licensed Raquel as a curate. She's still in a curacy now, in fact. And they started off with 20-25 people. That was a year ago. I went to their first anniversary this Monday just gone. There were over 100 people there, nearly all of them younger people. Their services are in Portuguese, and the English speakers have headsets for it to be translated. The Portuguese-speaking people are learning English because all the lyrics for everything is done in English and Portuguese, and they sing alternate verses, and each congregation joins in with the others' language. They're reaching out in all kinds of ways. They have a 2-hour prayer meeting every Friday evening in person. They have an hour's prayer meeting every Wednesday evening on Zoom, and they have a 2-hour service every Sunday morning. This is young people. It's really, really vibrant. What they're also doing is they've got a music group on a Monday, and they just provide musical instruments and musical tuition. We've funded this with a grant. And young people have come. So the first worship song at the service that we went to on Monday was played by 6 young people, 4 of them non-English speaking or not with English as their first language. And they played instruments, and they'd never had access to musical instruments before. So that was really encouraging. They're now starting a football academy this Saturday if anybody wants to get along and join in.
Hallelujah.
But yes, of course. But what I thought was particularly remarkable about it was Amy, who's the priest in charge, is Scottish. She comes from Glasgow. Now, she wanted to take this plant really seriously. So on Monday, she'd just completed her 500th hour of learning Portuguese. And she stood up and led part of the service in Portuguese with a Scottish accent. But actually, that's integrity, isn't it? That's self-sacrificial. That's coming alongside in the truest sense to show that you want to be part of that community and understand them.